Sebastian Middle-Martinez, MMAnytt, here at SBG Ireland in Dublin with head coach John Kavanagh. So, John, we just had a little bit of discussion about the UFC event coming up here in Dublin. However, by the time this airs, that event will probably be history. So, speaking of history...
Great 3 wins, right?
Yeah, exactly. Most probably. We don't know yet. But speaking of history, let's get to some of your history, some of this gym's history. When did you start, getting into martial arts, and just could you sort of sum up your story from that, getting to where you are right now, standing in this octagon?
Probably like most young boys, I had an interest in martial arts, and I've been in and out of different martial arts places since I was 4. My dad started me when I was 4. I guess I got serious when I was 19. I saw UFC 1, and like to a lot of people who do martial arts, that was maybe a rude awakening is the right word, because I thought I could fight. I did karate and boxing, kickboxing. I'd never done grappling. That looked weird to me. And then UFC 1 came along and changed all that. So since 19, I'm 38 now. So it's, what's that, 20 years ago? Almost 20 years ago. Jesus, I'm getting freaking old. But I guess it's been like all of us Europeans, maybe it's been it was a slow learning process for me, because we couldn't get Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We were learning through magazines and the odd technique here and there.
And obviously that was before YouTube, before the internet. So
definitely, yeah. Now, there's actually a jiu-jitsu club called YouTube Jiu-Jitsu, and it's a group of guys that just learn off YouTube. So it's a very different time to live in now. Like I said, when I was learning, it was kind of headlocking your friend, and if he tapped out, oh, that's a move. Let's write that down. But I'm also glad I went through that, because it made me very appreciative when I was learning something new. Anyway, I started training when I was in first year in university, and I did a course in engineering. And when I graduated, I was also, at that stage, I was training about 5 years. So I was, in terms of Irish standard, I was like Hicks and Gracie, as a beginning blue belt, so I could kill everybody, I had special powers. So I opened up my first small gym, which was about the size of this octagon. And there was a small group of guys, and it's funny actually, a lot of those same guys now are still training with me, or they've gone to open up their own places, like Andy Ryan from Team Rhino that has Neil Seary on the card. He started there with me, and it was just a bunch of guys that had a similar passion for martial arts and exchanging ideas and learning from each other. You fast forward 12, 13 years, and here I am being interviewed by the fantastic MMA news website. I can't even pronounce that. MMAnytt. It's a great honor, and here we are in a 10,000 square foot full-time facility with home of maybe the most famous MMA fighter on the planet right now. So it's weird. It still catches me by surprise when I think about it, but here we are.
All right, well, first of all, you look great for 38. I thought you were younger. Must be the MMA training. Now, as you were saying, this is, of course, the home of one of the biggest MMA stars in the world, Conor McGregor. He's gotten so much attention worldwide, and rightfully so. But what does that mean for the gym? Because some people talk about how it can draw a little bit of focus away from the gym as a whole and, put too much focus on the individual. But what's the atmosphere been like here since his success?
Yeah, that's a great question. But it's something that me and Conor talk about, and certainly Conor does, that he loves being here because it's so different. Like, the gym is his getaway from the notorious, his personality outside. In the gym, he's one of the guys. He's just one of the guys. Of course, there's, the kids come up and get pictures and stuff like that, but day to day, like, I have a class of 25, 30 fighters. He's one of the group. There's no difference, and I see it in the eyes of like visiting fighters. A lot of visiting Swedish fighters come here and from all over Europe, and when he just walks onto the mat, they're kind of like, like looking at him, and okay, you're in his group, and they're right away with him, wrestling with him or grappling, striking, whatever. Maybe they're a little bit surprised, but I've tried to maintain that atmosphere that he's just another, I'd say to him, another brick in the wall. Just another part of the gym, and right now, he's the star, but the next wave of guys is coming up, and he'll retire, and they'll fill that spot. And I'm aiming to be doing this for a long time, so nobody's special within these walls.
And how much would you say his personality differs from, when he's doing the press conferences? I mean, some people have been critical of like how he expresses himself, but what would you say, how big is the difference between his personality here at the gym when he's one of the guys, and then when he's sitting there on, the Go Big press conference with, many of the best fighters in the world?
I guess it's what he's being asked. I've only ever known him just to be honest in his opinion. Like, he can be on the mat and someone might be sparring and he'll turn around and say, you're looking very sloppy. That's incorrect. Why do you keep dropping your hand there? Why are you getting taken down there? Or vice versa. You're looking very sharp today. That was great takedown defense and you pass guard really nice there. And then he's at a press conference and he's asked, how do you think you'll fare against this fighter? And you say, well, I'll easily beat him. He's very stiff. He's got no movement. So I've only ever seen him being honest. So I guess it's what he's being asked. So I personally don't see any change in his personality.
And here at the gym at SBG Ireland, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the biggest MMA gym in Europe with around 10,000 square feet.
I think we are. Especially for a dedicated MMA center. We don't do anything else here. We have a small strength and conditioning area up there, but it's very specific just for training fighters. We don't have guys in here just doing bicep curls. So it's certainly one of the biggest. Not all about size, but is it?
Not necessarily, but you've got both.
My girlfriend.
Well, I guess maybe both size and quality plays it.
Something like that.
Now, usually, we got the flags here to represent the different fighters that come in the gym, and hopefully we get a nice shot of a Swedish flag in the background. Have we got it? Okay, great. Now, you mentioned there have been a couple of Swedish fighters coming in here. Anyway, I mean, obviously, I know you got a lot of fighters, but if any you can name drop?
I am the worst guy in the world with names. Maybe you can help me. I had a guy in here, and he's part of the IMAF, the Swedish amateur MMA team. I was calling him, what's that guy off Spartan, and he kicks the guy.
Leonidas?
Leonidas. I was calling him. He looks a bit like Leonidas. I think he's the lightweight fighter, 70-kilo fighter for Sweden, and I was really impressed by him. Very professional approach. I was surprised to hear he was an amateur. Technically sound everywhere, but I just liked his mind. I liked talking to him. I thought he had a very professional approach, and I have a 70-kilo guy as well in the IMAF championship, so I would tip him to be second place.
Okay. That's very, very smart coaching, right? Now, backtracking a little bit to the Notorious, which we've got here on your shirt and everything. Do you feel that sometimes that people talk about the situation with, for example, TJ Dillashaw and Team Alpha Male, that one fighter gets a success and then leaves, and that sort of damages the gym. But from what I'm hearing from you, there's no way that he will ever leave because this is his getaway. But have there ever been rumors spread on the internet and stuff like that? People, oh, what if he moves to the U.S.? What if he decides to train in Las Vegas? How do you feel about those rumors and speculations that he would leave the gym?
Yeah, I saw some interview with TJ Dillashaw, and he said he was a traitor to his country because he's living in Vegas. Yeah. And I found that strange because I trained with him that day. So unless he gets on a jet or something and goes to Vegas after training, people talk. That's the internet. It's I try not to spend too much time worrying about the future. What will happen will happen. Like I said, in this gym, I don't really have anybody. There's nobody special. There's always a fresh group of guys coming through, and whoever's on the mat when I'm giving my training session, that's my focus today. Yeah. It's kind of like Heraclitus with his river analogy. You can't step in the same river twice. It's always flowing. And this is what it's like with my fighters. There's always a flow of fighters. I always have 17, 18-year-olds coming up. They hit their mid to late 20s, they peak, and then in their early 30s they start drifting away. And not too many MMA coaches give a ancient Greek reference, do they?
Yeah, exactly. Especially since we've been talking about size matters, going to ancient Greek. That's a nice turn of events there. I like it.
I like my classical studies.
Now, obviously, Conor was supposed to fight Jose Aldo for the title earlier this year. That fell through. As a coach, the one analyzing footage, the one making a game plan, the one spending tireless hours analyzing footwork and things like that. How frustrating was that for you to all of a sudden have to do something completely different for a completely different fighter?
To be really, really honest, the fight with Aldo it's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I want Conor to, unify the belt and maybe silence some critics. There'll be a lot more, I'm sure, but maybe silence some. But as a coach, I was actually more excited by the Mendes fight. Yeah, because I just felt Conor has grown up fighting Aldos. Like in Europe, we tend to have a more of a striking base. Conor's boxed his whole life. We have high-level Thai boxers come in here all the time from Holland, and I believe a higher level of stand-up than Aldo. So I felt I knew how that fight was going to go. But the Mendes fight, this was different. He's that small, non-stop wrestler that was always talked about by the fans, the American fans. When he faces a wrestler, and even for me as a coach, I was very excited to see how he's going to do against this high-level wrestling. So to be honest, when I got the call about the change of opponent, I was more excited by this, and then I was thinking, I'm going to go in and ask Conor now and see what he thinks. And then when he agreed, as I knew he would, that was more interesting to me than the Aldo fight. So I kind of feel the Aldo fight in December, again, I'm very much looking forward to it. I have a huge amount of respect for Aldo, what he's done over all these years. But I feel I know how that fight's going to go more easily than I know how the Mendes fight was going to go.
And looking at Aldo, obviously he's been the king of the featherweight division for such a long time and gone pretty unchallenged by most people. He hasn't really lost a whole lot of rounds. When you size up his stand, because most people don't expect Aldo to shoot on a whole lot of takedowns in this fight. How do you analyze his style of striking versus Conor's style of striking?
One big thing will stand out to me is the amount of punishment Aldo takes. He was unrecognizable after the Mendes fight. Conor came out with one cut. And it was a good shot. It was a good elbow. But he didn't have this kind of misshapen potato head by the end of it. So Aldo is, that kind of Thai boxing mentality. Step into the pocket, you throw your shots, you take your shots. It's I don't know how to describe it. Whereas for us, it's about walking out of the contest without being hit. For every time you get tagged, we're going to be analysing that footage and being highly critical of it. Why were you in that range there? Why did you get hit with that shot? I think for them, maybe it's more like a tough guy, like I took his best and I gave my best. That to me is kind of stupid. You don't want to get hit. You're not paid to be hit. You're paid to win. So I just think for Aldo, he's designed a style to beat kind of small wrestlers that are learning how to strike. That's how I would describe most of his opponents. The Mendes, Edgars, all of these guys, they're good wrestlers that are learning how to strike. I haven't seen him fight somebody that is taller than him, rangier, and I believe has a better style of striking. I've not seen him face that guy yet. I think he's going to start out the contest wanting to strike. Maybe he's angry and emotional. This fight's a year coming, and he'll want to trade. He'll realize he's too short. He hasn't got the range. And when he feels Conor's power, he will have never felt that before. I guarantee you that. He'll get lit up on the feet, and then we'll see Aldo the grappler.
And we haven't seen a whole lot of it. We saw a little bit of it in the Max Holloway fight. But what do you think the odds are of us seeing a takedown from Conor McGregor's side in this bout with Aldo?
It's a fight. Different things can happen if there's an opportunity for a takedown. We certainly don't have this attitude of like, don't be a pussy going for a takedown. It's mixed martial arts. Wherever the fight goes, you use your mixed martial arts. Conor's not a striker; he's a mixed martial artist. So you can be sure if they're in a clinch and the weight feels it's off, but there will be a takedown there for sure.
Now, we've been spending so much time talking about Conor, but a lot of people forget at one point he was the young up-and-coming guy trying to get into the UFC, and you train with so many high-level guys here who are doing exactly the same thing right now. Obviously, it's hard for us to predict these things. Sometimes fighters get short notice offers and they can get the opportunity to jump into a UFC contract. But if you were, Joe Silva or a UFC matchmaker, who do you think would be the next fighter from SBG Ireland to get into the UFC?
You're going to get me in trouble with all my guys now, aren't you? There's so many guys that are knocking on the door. Peter Queally has to be knocking on the door at this stage. I suppose in terms of James Gallagher, he's 18. He's had 19 fights at 18. That's crazy. He had his first fight when he was 13 against a 21-year-old. He just had his pro debut there a couple of weeks ago. Destroyed his opponent. He's been training professional. He's been, for all intents and purposes, he's been training as a pro for the last 3 years. He lives with me. I seen that guy Sage North. He's 18 or 19, and he's at the getting in there. So with James' experience, and he can't be too, he's only 1-0 as a pro, but he's 18 amateur fights. So, but like I said, I'm going to leave out somebody's name now, and you're going to get me in trouble.
All right, fair enough. We won't have you choose favorites or anything like that. Now, to round off here, everyone's been talking about this Irish MMA explosion. That a lot of it has come with the rise of Conor McGregor and such. But there seems to be such a strong fighting culture here anyway, despite that. It's like it was almost an explosion waiting to happen. Like there was already the desire for it. They just needed someone to latch onto. Why do you think that is? Why is there such a strong fighting culture here in Ireland?
I could take the microphone and ask you the same thing, And it took for Gustafsson to maybe get the headlines, but I've been traveling to Sweden for 10 years now. I should actually give a shout out to SPG Norrköping, my good friend Daniel, and SPG Stockholm, Saeed. They're doing great jobs over there. So I've been going back and forth to Sweden. Actually, the first ever SPG European training camp was in Norrköping in Sweden. So we have a strong connection with Sweden. But yeah, I think it's been a European thing, to be honest. There's a lot of different European countries with a strong base in mixed martial artists that it took Bisping and maybe the UK or Dan Hardy to kind of blow it up there. Gustafsson to blow it up in Sweden. I don't know if you know, but Gustafsson used to come here to train in Conor's boxing gym in Crumlin. Maybe in the fact there for Sweden, you guys didn't know about. And Conor did it here, so it just takes that personality. But fighting is, I believe, in the European blood. We have that Ultimate Fighter series going now, and it's what's it 2-2 I think at the moment between. When is this going to go out?
Well, it depends. Maybe next week, so it might be 3-2 to Europe by that time that rolls around.
Who knows? But it's only getting started. Let's put it that way. Let's see how the Europeans fare against the Americans. So I think we have a harder route to the UFC. You can get someone like Sage that will get in. I think he's quite green still. He's quite inexperienced. Not too many pro fights. Whereas for a European to get in, you got to be like 10-0 or 11-1 or something. So we have a harder path. So they're more seasoned by the time they get in there. I feel I'm on a tangent. I'm drifting here. So save me. Give me a new question.
All right. Well, speaking of the Ultimate Fighter, Artem Lobov was or is currently part of Ultimate Fighter there. However, he originally wasn't because he lost his first fight to get into the house. As a coach, when you were watching my first episode, I can imagine you knew a little bit of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. But first hearing about that he lost his fight and such, what were you thinking?
I was very, very sad for a bunch of reasons. Artem defines fighter. He's a fighter's fighter. I've probably traveled with Artem more than any other of my fighters. I traveled with him alone to Sweden when he fought Svensson there, and I've traveled with him alone to the UK when he fought Saul Rogers there, who's a teammate now. I've probably done more traveling with Artem, just the two of us, than with any of my fighters. He's a crazy amount of fights in a short period of time. He really is anyone, anytime, anywhere. He's begged me to put him into heavyweight 8-man tournaments. He's a crazy guy. Bit of background on that fight. When Conor won the fight on Saturday night, we had all trained for 12 weeks for that fight. Artem was part of that team, obviously. He did the most rounds with Conor. He'd been through wars with Conor in that 12-week lead-up. We knew he was fighting on that Thursday. So Saturday night was the celebration, and he was fighting on Thursday. The Saturday night celebration kind of lasts till Tuesday, if we're being honest. As much as you tried to keep the discipline, after 3 months of being locked in the house, and we all followed the same diet as Conor, and we all trained the same way, and hard sessions, we had a 20, 48, 72-hour kind of blowout, and then he's stepping into the ring. So I thought he was a bit lackluster in that fight. Now, in saying that, he fought a fantastic opponent. But let's see how he does now with a bit more rest and a bit more readiness in his upcoming fights. But I was very happy that we could maybe influence the UFC a tiny bit and get him back in there.
All right, excellent. And it seems like this, UFC going to Ireland is going to be a pretty annual thing because the market is here and such. When it comes to, the fighters, the Irish fighters who step into the cage, putting it all on the line, especially a lot of the fighters from this gym, there's a lot of intensity. There's just so much fire, and it's very rare you see, a fighter just trying to, win on points or such. Would you say that is, again, part of the European, maybe a little Irish culture there when it comes to sort of just this intensity, this will to win? Also, because like you said, the road to the UFC is harder.
Yeah, I think, especially from Ireland, when we're traveling, we're the little country, we're new to this sport. So there's definitely that side of it. And there's also, they know that it's one thing to get into the UFC, it's another thing to stay in the UFC. And again, like I said, I think the Europeans have a harder path to get into the UFC. They've to go through a lot more fights on the European circuit. You've got to rise up through that very tough circuit to eventually get to the American circuit, the UFC circuit, which is mostly in America. And then, like I said, to stay there is even more difficult. So every fight for them is like a championship fight, that they're fighting for their contract. And they're fighting to stay in there, and you can see that in them.
Irish fans in particular have made themselves heard, and we're just wrapping up here, so they've definitely made themselves heard. We saw video, actually, the guy holding the camera right now shot some video in Las Vegas in a lobby there when McGregor was fighting Mendes, and it was like all of Las Vegas was Irish. What is it with this passion? It's like this will to just be the loudest in the arena to make sure that your fighter hears you.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I remember as a kid watching, it was a very famous World Cup for us, Italia in 90. I was 13, so here we go again. But I remember that, and this was on in Italy, obviously, and the amount of fans, and this was during a time when not too many people had money. And people were taking out bank loans and remortgaging their house so that they could go to Italy and support the national football team. And all the fans from around the world were just kind of looking at, who are these crazy people, Again, maybe we're a small nation. We were, we had that whole British rivalry thing. We got hammered by when the British invaded Ireland, and we kind of learned to be always fighting and trying to gain freedom in that sense. And then, sorry, my girlfriend just trying to make me laugh there. So when we go competing, we just had this kind of, maybe it's like small man syndrome almost, like that we have to try to beat them at everything, have the loudest fans, put on the best fights, put on the best matches, and that's after traveling over. Now we have a new sport here, and we have a guy that's not only competing on the world stage but dominating on the world stage. So it gives us all as a nation immense pride, and it's still, I'm flabbergasted and bowled over by the amount of people that, their annual holiday. People here have one holiday a year, and they're using that holiday to come and support Conor and support the guys. It's very moving, and you don't think it isn't in my mind when we're doing our sessions. We're doing that extra session because I don't have to look those fans in the eyes and put on a half performance, and they've spent their year's salary to be there.
All right, well, that's a great note to end on. Irish fans, you are not only heard in the octagon, but you're also heard here at the gym in SBG Ireland, where Coach John Kavanagh will continue to coach some of your favorite fighters to continue success. John, thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it. And have fun coaching some future stars.
Will do. Thanks very much, guys.